好，非常谢谢主办单位政大教育实验推动中心。好，这是我的母校，所以很高兴回到母校。那我想这个场次最主要是由我们很著名的印度，尤其是在女权部分的学者来做分享。好，那请容许我先跟他打个招呼。Hello, Dr. Deepti, could you hear us? Could you hear us? Hello. 或者你等一下。好 ，OK。好，那我想在我们听他的演讲之前，我想先做一个简短的对于这个讲者的介绍，也许有助于大家在理解他所谓另类教育在印度的脉络。好，因为他其实是一个非常有名的就是尤其是妇女教育的推动者。好，我想这个 Dr. Deepti 好，我们把它称为Mehrotra。那其实他这个学院即将成为大学，那他是经济学学士、哲学博士，哲学跟政治科学的硕士。那政治科学方面，其实尤其在妇女运动跟就是社会学，好，所以其实如果以整个他去推动所谓另类教育的想法，其实有非常多来自于政治经济学后面的基础。好，那这个学院其实它是教育学院，但是它也即将申请成为大学。那第二个部分是有关他的政治经济哲学、性别与妇女研究，还有就是社会跟政治运动。所以对他来讲，另类教育跟所有的妇女运动，不只是教育，其实也是一个很重要的社会运动，去推展出。好，那所以他今天会以教育哲学的基础，但是其实是在谈很多在就是尤其印度的另类教育，那其实有涉及到非常多的性别议题。那所以右边是他研究的兴趣，尤其他关注的相关的部分。那其实他也参与了非常多的基金会，也就是说，其实这位学者其实不管在论述上面，还有行动上面，其实做了非常多的社会连结跟实践。好，那这是他的著作哈，从2002年开始，其实他用西方的哲学去连结印度的女性主义，还有Homeland 这一本书，其实在谈所谓的单亲妈妈。尤其是因为印度其实有一些童婚，还有就是儿童的婚姻，还有它其实有很多妇女的议题，包含对于教育、对于就业、对于医疗、对于政治，其实有非常多的不平等。所以其实它的所有的写作都跟妇女的父权有关系哈。那第三本是2009年的《Burning Bright》这本书，其实是在谈印度的一个非常有名的人权维士。这位我们把她称为铁娘子哈 ，Sharmila， 她其实用了10几年的绝食抗议，去抗议印度对于所谓军政权的很多的问题。好，那所以她的研究里面其实有非常多勇敢的女性怎么样去走出来对抗很多的不公平、社会不公。好，那第4本2018年这一本，印度北部其实有一个叫做Nantaki 的戏剧，那它其实也是有点像受压迫者剧场的概念，俗民的长民的剧场，但是怎么样去展现出非常多的性别议题？所以其实他也参与了艺术基金会，所以在另类教育的部分，我觉得他有非常多的接触，他用了非常多的了解跟脉络去把当地的性别不平等的议题怎么样展现出来，然后培力。那最右边的是他最近的著作，就是所有在印度里面其实都是男生的声音。但是在父权底下，其实有哪些其实是很伟大的女性？她们曾经有哪些很棒的故事？那这些所有的，所以这里其实有很多叙说、探究，有非常多的性平，有非常多的培力，以及在后面这本书，其实我想就是他等一下要谈的，他参与的部分啊，它是 Alternative Schooling in India。那其实它的来自的基金会其实是也是一样，都是为了那个 Girls Education 的基金会。所以它是一本合著的书。那个 Deepti 在里面其实是第3个就是它是有一个篇章，就是在谈所谓就是印度一个持续旅程的所谓的 alternative education 它的一些起源。好，那其实跟所谓的儿童福利法跟青少女的教育权是很有关系的。好，所以也就是说，了解它的那个另类教育，其实要回到它对于妇女运动以及对于就是少女的。或是贫困的这些就是孩子的一些受教权的，所以它的议题其实结集了所有的种族、阶级、性别 所有的议题在他的另类教育里面，所以其实非常有就是培力跟弱势者教育的概念。那也其实非常符合我们在另类教育里面去谈的，就是说我们怎样为所有的人 empower。好，那这个是等一下我会问的问题。我想我们就交给 I have finished my introduction. It's really you have a lot of great contribution and also the writing. So I think it's your turn. Please allow me to actually our audience are really waiting for your speech. Okay? Okay. So please take your time.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you so much for having me here and sharing my thoughts. Also for the introduction. I wanted to just add that I have been a teacher educator since the year 2000 and have been actually teaching more of social sciences to teachers to be in Delhi University. And also now I have left the Delhi University, but I continue to be part of a teacher training program in the National Capital Region of India. I live in New Delhi, which is the capital. And I work in an alternative school, very part-time, but I do work in an alternative school now. So it's honorary just work that I want to do from the heart. So I will begin by sharing my PowerPoint, my presentation, and we can take it from there. So I'll go through this and try to do this in 40 minutes. That's why I'm just going straight into this. So that we have time for discussion and questions and comments. So alternative, I've taken a rather large canvas, alternative schooling in India. Philosophy to my mind is very important, so I have kept to that more than, and pedagogy is kind of flows from philosophy. So my focus here is quite a bit on the philosophies. I think we tend to miss that out, and that is the larger picture in a way. So India is a huge country and we have so many different kinds of schools going on. So this, I will be looking at two streams, but I begin by introducing you to alternative schools in India very broadly. Alternative schools base their practice on certain philosophies of education, which are markedly different from mainstream schools. These alternative schools are very relevant for the whole field of education. In the present world, such education offers alternative visions and possibilities. Very, very broadly, philosophy and pedagogy, alternative schools encourage cooperation, not competition, encourage self-awareness and self-reliance, environmental awareness, sustainable ways of life and livelihood, local culture and global understanding, and go beyond received knowledge. So there is the notion of constructing knowledge in the classroom. Pedagogy flowing from this, education addresses the whole child, not only the mental, which is what most schools do, addressing only the mental. But in alternative schools, the whole child is addressed. The teaching is participatory, not top-down or textbook focused, but involving the students very much. So the voices are not just one person's voice, but the voices of everybody in the classroom. Questions are encouraged and issues examined in depth. Attention is paid to individual needs and qualities. The curriculum is usually flexible with scope for students' interest to guide the learning process. Alternative schools versus mainstream schools. There is in alternative schools a close bonding between teachers and students, whereas a mechanical approach prevails in most of the mainstream schools, and the teacher is an authority figure. The alternative schools emphasize connections between disciplines and integrated learning, whereas in mainstream schools, each subject is usually taught as a capsule and connections are seldom drawn. In alternative schools, the pedagogy is experiential. The experiences of students, of teachers are part of the classroom. The curriculum is open-ended, alive to real-world situations, both of the people present, students and teachers, and real-world local situations, global situations, national, of course. Mainstream schooling, on the other hand, pedagogy is dominated by lecture and textbook. Issues are seldom brought alive, and the curriculum is standardized. The last one, I'm sorry, there's a mistake there. The alternative schooling, actually, pathway to alternative visions and possibilities are opened up. Mainstream schooling aims that children fit into the status quo. Some alternative educationists, just broadly, because these are very well known in India, are very well known figures. Aurobindo Ghosh, Mira Alfasad, these are all classics, these are not alive anymore, neither Aurobindo Ghosh nor the mother, nor M.K. Gandhi, nor Rabindranath Tagore or J. Krishnamurti, whom we had Gautama speaking about the Krishnamurti school yesterday, Gijubhai Badhika. These are all classics who are very well known in India. They have kind of pioneered alternative education in India. And we are continuing to try and run some alternative schools based on their philosophies, but of course, many people have taken those and implemented in their own way, also rethought, thought more, but these continue to be very pioneering thinkers for us, because each of their work was very comprehensive and very deep. I've also just mentioned a couple more schools kind of people, Rama and Ramdas. They run a school with indigenous communities in South India. Excellent school, very differently run. Jayashree and Amit, they run a school called Adharshila Learning Center in Central India, and with village children, and it is a transformational school. It transforms the lives of those who are in it. So I am going to focus in today's paper on two important alternative education streams. One is based on the philosophy of Aurobindo Ghosh, usually known here as Sri Aurobindo. Sri is an honorific, like Mr., but with much more honor to it. So Sri Aurobindo and Mira Alfasad, she is known as the mother. So this is the philosophy based on their thinking and their practice actually in education is called integral education. So that is what I will actually begin looking at, sharing with you. The second I will come to is Mahatma Gandhi or M.K. Gandhi's educational thought. So integral education is often also called the free progress system. It aims at the free unfolding of the potential of each child within a comprehensive schema. It seeks to address each aspect of the growing child. Each aspect or each part of the human being requires systematic education. Broadly, the physical that we all have, the vital, which we can think of as emotions, desires, and thirdly, the mental, and fourthly, the Sri Aurobindo and the mother bring up what they call in their language the psychic. We can understand it as spiritual, and that is, of course, a little more obscure, but it is very much part of their schema. The true art of teaching, as Sri Aurobindo has put it, a child from 7 years of age is capable of a good deal of concentration if he or she is interested. A child, if interested, prefers to get to the end of a subject rather than leave it unfinished. To lead the child step by step, interesting and absorbing her in each item as it comes until she has mastered the subject is the true art of teaching. The first work is to interest the child in life work, and knowledge, to develop the instruments of knowledge with the utmost thoroughness, to give him mastery of the medium he must use. That is our body, the mind, and the body. So developing the child's faculties is the first work. So teacher is a friend and a living example. Children must be educated. This is the mother, quotations from the mother, and the work she did with children was very much in this line. The children must be educated in an atmosphere of love and gentleness. No violence, never. No scolding, never. Always there must be a gentle kindness, and the teacher must be the living example of the virtues the child must acquire. The child must be happy to go to school, happy to learn, and the teacher must be their best friend who gives them the example of the qualities they must acquire. The integral classroom. The integral or free progress classroom is concerned with developmental learning. The teacher's concern is to help each student develop her or his mental, vital, and physical instruments to the maximum. The focus is on the fundamental process of self-development. And the processes include self-observation towards self-awareness, space and time always for reflection, a welcoming environment, no fear, choices to be based on inner motives, taking responsibility for one's decisions. Students are encouraged to discovery and sharing and expression. Space and time for development and perfection of personal capacities and qualities. Processes of growth include, for all of us actually, widening, helping the children, teachers help the children to learn all the time in each aspect of the being. Deepening, developing a deeper understanding, living from a deeper level. The mother says you must always step back into yourself. Learn to go deep within. Step back and you will be safe. So, of course, this is about facing real life and many problems that come up. So Sri Aurobindo had outlined 3 principles of true teaching. I have only brought a little bit of it. These can be discussed for several hours, but the first is that nothing can be taught. The teacher is not an instructor, but a helper and a guide. So nothing can be taught because it is actually the person who is learning, who is doing the self-teaching even. The teacher is actually a helper and a guide to the learning that the student undertakes. Secondly, the mind has to be consulted in its own growth. The aim of education is to help the growing soul to draw out the best in itself. And thirdly, to work from the near to the far, from that which is to that which shall be. This principle also includes working from, say, the mother tongue, what the child is familiar with, to other languages, etc. Assessment in such schools is to be in harmony with the principles of teaching, is based on development and not on ranking or grading. It is diagnostic, it is kind of feedback and diagnosis of what the child needs. It is participatory, it is non-judgmental, it is individualized, it includes self-evaluation and fosters self-awareness and self-discovery. Integral education schools. So there are several schools run on the lines of integral, several hundred actually, of integral education and free progress. These schools include Mirambika in New Delhi and in Pondicherry in South India, Sri Aurobindo International Center for Education. Research on the Free Progress School Mirambika found that students are expressive, independent, responsible, information seekers, enthusiastic about learning and gaining knowledge, good at group work, helpful leaders, potential to be leaders, good at academic and co-curricular activities. So this was an independent research carried out by the NCRT, that is our National Council for Educational Research and Training, under the government. So Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education in Pondicherry is a field for experiment and research in education. It is much larger than the Delhi school, and there is a lot more of Sri Aurobindo and the mother in Pondicherry. They lived there for many long years, and many people continue to live there and follow their philosophies, and the schooling is part of it. The mother opened the school for children way back in 1943. It still runs very well. The school has continued to grow and experiment. The Sri Aurobindo International Center of Education provides education from the beginning to college levels. Sri Aurobindo considered the formation of a new system of education as one of the best means to prepare the future humanity. So I'm going to transition to the second stream that I want to introduce to you. And this is the education based on the thinking and practice of Gandhi. Gandhi, most of you would know a little bit about at least, and that is he's considered often the father of the Indian nation. I don't know about that, but he was a very important leader in our freedom struggle, the freedom from colonial rule. And he really had the charisma to bind the people together. And his thinking was very rooted in a lot of principles and values that he had. He was also very well read. He wrote very well. We have, his collected works are in 100 volumes. And he was constantly with the people. So very unusual person. He also considered education extremely important and worked with children in his the places wherever he lived. And so I'm not going more into the history. I'm going straight into the education. So some of the guiding principles in the Gandhian education: culture of the heart and building of character, physical labor, plus along with all the other school subjects that we know of, but physical labor as well is very important. Community living with a common kitchen, equal respect for all religions. Teachers work with children at every kind of labor. And mother tongue as the medium of education. So these are some of the guiding principles. So just to give you a visual picture of a Gandhian school, this also started in the 1940s, 42, and it continues to exist in the north of India, in the Himalaya mountains actually. It is there in the mountains. And children who come into it are from very remote villages usually, and they come and stay here. So this little picture just gives you a glimpse of work in education. This child is carrying a bucket, and this is essential tasks that she is involved with. A pedagogic value of physical labor. I'm continuing with the Gandhian thinking. Each child should learn a useful craft. Craft will be taught scientifically. Gandhi understood vigorous manual work to be the principal means of stimulating the intellect. So this is unusual thinking that working with the hands actually stimulates the head, the brain as well. Education is linked to self-reliance. So this is the other reason why education is extremely important, the sociological reason. Work education forms the basis for self-reliance. It implies the possibility of a sustainable economy with employment for all, including, of course, self-employment. Crafts and work education focuses on basic needs like agriculture, clothing, including spinning, weaving, tailoring, shelter, food, pottery to make useful items for everyday life, and other useful productive work. Gandhi said that there is enough on earth to fulfill every person's need, but not enough to fulfill the greed that human beings have. So education, craft, and freedom. Gandhi advocated cooperative craft activity not for the market but for own use. This would foster self-reliance and independence of spirit, nurturing the capacity to resist abuse of authority. He saw this capacity to resist, to dissent, as holding the key to real freedom. The spread of Gandhian schools, far back in 1939 already, there were over 200 schools running on Gandhian lines, as well as 14 teacher training colleges. After national independence in 1947, the Indian government put in place a conventional schooling system, which did not really incorporate the Gandhian philosophy in its core. However, a number of Gandhian schools survived, continue to this day, like the school I showed you one picture of, and they continue to be based on an alternative vision of education linked to universal employment and dignity of labor. So these are again from the same school. Students learn to care for the environment, and teachers also help to work with nature, with agriculture. So teachers and children grow food and perform various life tasks. For instance, the cooking is done by small groups of children. It's a exchange. One week it will be one group, next week another group, and so on. And the dairy, the cows are looked after. So various work options open up. Now I'm coming to the national curriculum, where work, so if we look at work and education in our national curriculum framework of 2005, which continues to be what our textbooks are largely still running on. It was a very well-designed national curriculum framework in 2005. It advocates inclusion of work as an integral part of education and recommends that work should be integrated at every level of schooling for all children. However, this very radical proposal has not been implemented. This is a Gandhian thinking, but it has not been implemented. Only work comes in as just a mild extracurricular subject called socially useful productive work, which is not usually taken very seriously within the schools. It is just a side subject. So work as a central part of schooling has not been accepted in the national framework. Lakshmi Ashram, again, the work that goes on, the Gandhian thinking is that work is an essential part of education. Coming to another aspect of Gandhian thinking, which links with all this, National Education Act, peace education. So the National Curriculum Framework 2005 advocates integration of peace education too across the curriculum. It recommends that Gandhian insights should be woven into lessons as well as activities. Gandhi is very well known as a peace and non-violence leader. So Gandhian insights should be woven into lessons and activities. However, peace education too has not been systematically introduced so far. Again, rooting ourselves in what did Gandhi say about it? Education for peace, Gandhi said there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Education for peace means learning to live peace daily and hourly, wherever one happens to be. So this remains true also when we think of peace education in schooling. It means really that a way that teachers also have learned to live in peace, that there is a way of life that inculcates or that encourages, that is peaceful. And then children will learn peace. So here we have again Lakshmi Ashram, where learning might be quite peaceful with joy, creativity, and freedom. But education for peace implies, as I said, a completely changed educational system, which as a whole is conducive to peace. So not just a little add-on subject or half subject, but education for peace believes in the critical role of transforming cultures of violence and war into cultures of peace worldwide. Gandhi had said that the real remedy for injustice and exploitation is non-violent democracy. And he says non-violent democracy is the same as true education for all. So true education for all, in other words, implies a democratic classroom, a non-violent classroom, a space, the whole school being a space where everybody participates democratically and there is peace and non-violence. So this is the real remedy for injustice and exploitation in the world. Gandhian education is a call for all-round training in non-violent democracy. It is founded on non-violent discipline and organization of daily life. Here I've just brought for you a picture of, this first person on the left, Vimla Bahugunaji, is an alumnus of Lakshmi Ashram, studied there many, many years ago. She's a very well-known environmental activist. Here she is with she's one of the leaders of a movement that saved so many trees, entire forests in the Himalayas. And here she is with village activists in movements to protect the forest. Another of the people who studied and then worked in Lakshmi Ashram all her life, Radha Behen, also well known for her activism in forest protection, river and land rights, children's and women's rights, also very, very active. Okay, so I'm moving to my last section of my presentation, the relevance of alternative education. So I have so far presented to you really two streams of alternative education, the basic philosophies there, the fact that they do have some very strong schools still running, but those schools are marginal to the mainstream processes. The mainstream schooling is still running on different lines, very conventional. So what is the relevance then of alternative education? Alternative education might provide some hope that the young people are developing sensitivity, understanding, skills, and vision that will help to find ways out of multiple crises that engulf today's world. Schools are part of society, and societies are in crisis. People are divided on the basis of class, caste, gender, religion, tribal, non-tribal, indigenous, non-indigenous. All these are dividing forces in society, as is nationalism also, this nation, that nation. Schools often reproduce the same patterns of divisiveness. Teachers are part of the same society. Many of them continue with many biases and prejudices. In most schools, teachers do not encourage students to ask the deeper questions. Rather, the most schools seem to train children to become simply obedient citizens and obedient workers. The children become competitive, following the rat race, rather than becoming independent thinkers and actors, doers. The mainstream school system that we have here is, it is a bureaucratic system. It is a centralized system. It gives very little freedom to teachers or to students or to even to management. There is very little space for creativity or genius. Students suffer because creativity in them is starved. Teachers also suffer, actually. If creativity is dammed up, the destructive forces find a way to grow in the human being. But in fact, if we step back and see what we're doing and what is the child is not a blank slate, but a conscious being. Education should provide conditions for this conscious being to grow in a harmonious way. Each child is unique, needs to be supported and guided in her own journey. Time may be needed for some students to make major shifts, to build up a new attitude. By changing inwardly, time should be allowed. Each child should be encouraged to make conscious choices and progress to the maximum in areas of her choice, without comparison with other students, without competition. The responsibility for learning should shift more and more to the child. Space is there for experimentation in the alternative schools, making mistakes, acknowledging weaknesses. Mistakes are not treated as weaknesses, rather as challenges for greater effort and progress. Each child is encouraged to strive for perfection in every sphere of development. So this is what is the effort in alternative schools, and I'm suggesting that if this could be there in the wider system, it would transform society in very good ways. Alternative school teachers create an open, respectful environment, stimulate learning through encouragement. They test less, they observe more. They are clear what they want to assess and how. Qualitative evaluation much more than quantitative. Are enthusiastic, understanding, inspired, open-hearted. When schools consciously encourage cooperation rather than competition, children are less conflicted. This is a huge issue in itself. The mental health issues coming up in children are alarming. So this is very important. The children in the environment that is built up in the alternative schools build up good relationships, relate with one another more joyfully, sincerely appreciate each other's gifts and talents. There is a strong sense of love for one's fellow beings that develops. Compulsory discipline, which seems to be the norm in the mainstream and conventional education, but compulsory discipline is harmful. There are methods that may work more slowly, but are more certain to develop the good in a person rather than any unnatural compulsory disciplinary methods. Here I'm quoting an educationist, Rudolf Steiner, who many of you may know. Discipline is a word that does come in alternative schools also. It comes in as self-discipline or inner discipline, whereas outer discipline is associated with fear, punishment, authority. Inner discipline is different, and if a school emphasizes harmony and affection, children develop an inner discipline. They are interested in what they're doing, then they do it. They do it very well. Such children are responsible, confident, and self-motivated. So schools need to provide support for girls, very especially, and girls' agency and strength. We have continuing a huge deal of violence against women and systems that are not good for girls or for boys or for men or for women. Schools need to respect girls and women and teach boys to do the same. Gender roles are being questioned by students, by teachers, and questioning gender roles is good for girls and for boys. Change is needed which is good for girls and for boys. Students like to think about issues and express their opinions. When environment allows, they voice their thoughts. In democratic schools, students are able to express themselves and to feel valued. Dissent and constructive criticism can greatly enrich the school ethos. All staff members have a role to play in responding to student concerns, and freedom, discussion, dialogue, and mutual respect are essential to education. For young people to thrive, it is important to understand oneself and the world. Then they can work to make their own place, not just to fit in, but also to transform what needs to be transformed. Injustice, violence, hypocrisy, misguided policies, selfish economies. Quotation from Krishnamurti, we say so easily that we love our children, but is there love in our hearts when we accept the existing social conditions, when we do not want to bring about a fundamental transformation in this destructive society? And here we are speaking for a worldwide, global kind of destructive society that has come about. In schools where there is attention to each individual child, students develop a strong sense of self-worth, sensitivity, and self-confidence, relate to each other with authenticity and with compassion. They develop abilities to communicate from a strong center. They take their own decisions and accept the responsibilities. So this is my last slide here. The child thrives in such schools rather than just survive. Students thrive when their whole being is addressed rather than only a part. Their head, heart, and hands need to be addressed, not only the head. Affection and understanding are integral to healthy development. Such students develop capacities for self-care, as well as deep thinking and commitment towards the welfare of others and of society as a whole. So I will close here and look forward to questions, comments.
Thank you very much for your nice sharing. It's really impressive, okay? So I think you have put very clear explanation about the alternative pedagogy in India and also the origin and also a lot of great value about the children and also the pedagogy. So I think now our audience will really looking forward to ask the question and have some sharing the feedback for you. So now 我们可能就开放，老师请。
就第一个，当然谢谢王老师今天的主持，也谢谢我们的博士，我们的 Deepti, thank you so much for your being here today. So 今天也是要跟我是来自伊利诺伊大学的沈玉泉，然后我今天想要请问有2个问题。第一个部分是我们看到的是在2005年的时候，在印度这边有一个 National Curriculum Framework。那在它的执行的时候，对不起，因为我不太懂印度的状况，我很好奇的是，因为印度是一个非常多元性的国家，它从南到北，它从东到西，其实是非常的多元性。当它在执行这个部分的时候，它有没有机会去考量到它的多元性？因为其实它是一个非常可能是由中央政策执行的部分。那我希望第一个是不是在这个部分在执行的时候，政府有没有考量到多元性的部分？那第二个问题是，那在这个执行的部分是否有听从所谓的当地的意见？譬如说老师们他们希望说，还是老师们希望当地给予赋予的权利，老师希望能够带给孩子们的这是什么？还是说那其实是一个中央执行的政策，由中央直接 top down 下来？这是我们想要问的一个第一个问题跟第二个问题。第3个问题是我很喜欢的是我们那个 girls empowerment 这个部分。那我们在性别议题上面的话，我很好奇是这个部分是不是也列入在我们的 National Curriculum Framework， 还是说这个只是存在在我们 alternative 的学校里面？我很好奇的是这3个点，再麻烦老师您跟我们讲解，谢谢。
我们就一起收集问题哈。那荣臻主任，
我想请教一下，就是说，其实今天所有的演讲内容非常精彩，可能消化可能要花一点时间，非常好。那我想就是说，因为印度它其实有一个文化或历史的一些环境，造成教育的比如说性别的或者说贫穷的方面的教育的资源，其实面临很大的挑战。那我想您有这么好的一个理念跟想法，怎么样去落实去做？那你刚刚有提到这个合作，其实这个合作的部分其实是蛮大的一个挑战。老师跟老师之间的合作，社区与社区的合作，不同的班之间的合作，跟邻居的班其实是有一些不同的一个优点跟内容可以去交换学习。那这个是怎么样去step by step 去做？您有什么样的一个很好的策略可以跟我们大家去分享？谢谢。
So, Doctor, have you got the questions? Okay. And one more.
Yes. Do you want me to take up the questions now, or we can do some more?
Oh, maybe you can have some explanation now, because I think if we collect too many questions, maybe it will be difficult for you to answer. Okay.
Yeah,
so
it might become a bit confusing. So I will take up these already 4 questions because the first questioner asked 3 questions. So I will look at these 4 questions. And the diversity was the first issue that the questioner brought up. Did the National Curriculum Framework of India in 2005 take up the issue of diversity? So, and how do we handle it generally? Yes, India is a very huge country with many different regions, with many different languages, 8,000 languages apparently, but at least 20 which are very, very rich. So what we do is we have a 3-language policy that has been there for many years. So every child learns 3 languages during schooling, and this includes the mother tongue, it includes the national language, it includes English. So that is one way, way that some of the diversity is handled. But also the state, so the curriculum framework is a framework. Then there is a central organization making of actual textbooks, actually making. But every state is free to decide whether to follow those textbooks or not, and they can make their own. So there is the state SCRT, that is State Council for Educational Research and Training. So there is the National Council for Educational Research and Training. There are the state councils. Every state has a council. So the states, most often, they redo the textbooks in their to bring in their own cultures and their own histories also. So you also asked whether local views were taken in when making the curriculum, and so local views, actually in 2005, it was a very good process, very unusual. It was the best time we've had such a good process, which is that teachers from various parts of the country were involved also, and NGOs who had been working with education on the ground were involved. Some alternative schools were a little bit involved. So it was a very good process. We had excellent textbooks, but teacher training was carried on through the country, but I think there we fell short. So very often the teachers found they're not able to teach the new textbooks, which were very well made. And I have to come to the present also, because we are in the process with a new government, with different changes in government. The government actually looks at education in its own way. And now this government is changing the framework, changing the ideology, changing the thinking. And we are actually stepping back a little bit on the diversity issues, on the empowerment issues. We're bringing in a lot of different way of looking at culture, which we may not all, which may not be so inclusive. And so there are a lot of, it's a very contentious, very conflicted terrain at the moment, and it always is. But at the moment, it is particularly conflicted. A lot of the lessons which were included in 2005 are being taken out, and these are often to do with caste issues or gender issues. So this present government is also always interested in these issues, but somewhere its thinking is pulling back. So the third point that you brought up about girls' empowerment. This again is something that, yes, the governments are always aware of, because people are bringing it up. We have very strong women's movement activists and organizations, but and so much violence against women all the same. So there is an issue that is out there. The government knows it must take it up. We have so many programs, in school programs, within government schools also, which are especially for girls at primary level, scholarships, or particular, cycles for girls in remote areas, in middle school, if they come to school, so on. So many programs of incentives, of particular, and one of the important ones has been a sexuality education. It's actually called Adolescence Education Program. It is now called Health and Wellness Program, but this is being run throughout the country. There is always scope to do more. There is always scope to do much more, I have to say. And the teacher training that we did in Delhi, we do in Delhi University and other universities, also includes some aspect of gender empowerment. And I taught for many years a paper in university called Gender and Education, which is 2 teacher trainings. So there is a very good paper. And I think that needs to be done more and more. It is found that these teachers then are far more aware of themselves and therefore far more aware of what is needed for the students as well, for girls and for boys. So society itself can be very inhibited, so we need to come out of that. And education is the way. So there are many experiments there. The second questioner had asked about limited resources and gender issues and collaboration, really. So in what ways is there collaboration? At what levels is there collaboration? So this is a huge question, and collaboration in terms of, as I just pointed out, the government has brought in at various points during the National Curriculum Framework framing 2005, it was very inclusive. So there is the notion, there is the reality of collaboration. I think where we need to keep looking more is really being very authentic about tackling the issues of the indigenous people. 8.5% Indians are indigenous people, and they have different languages. They are small groups usually with their own languages, their own cultures. Development is actually coming into their areas in a destructive way usually. So how to empower those communities, how to empower the castes, which are the oppressed castes. And so these are issues which are very much in the public domain, and education is attempting to look at it, but I would say that alternative schools may be looking at it a little more, and some of the mainstream schools are looking at it more. But again, that's too huge an issue to go into in detail.
So, Doctor, we got 5 minutes to go, and we have 2 more questions for you. Okay?
Yeah.
So, yeah. 对不起，刚刚那个问题，请。
刚刚延续第二个问题，是因为印度是多种族，那我想比较请教细一点，就是这里面有提到他的母语教育。那这个母语教育，照我们的理解是，孩子在进入学校之前，应该有很多机会学习的。那为什么是需要加强那个母语？那母语在一个学校里头是如何确定为它是母语？谢谢。
It's about mother tongue language, okay?
刚才那个题目其实是 I'm very impressed that you said that all the education has to be based on children's mother tongue. I'm in agreement with the others person who was asking the question before, and I'm wondering, how did you do your multilingual education or even bilingual education starting from very young children back in India?
Yeah. Yeah. So is there any other question, or shall I take these up?
Yeah, I think, maybe you can answer now, please.
Sure. So these are very similar about the mother tongue. So why is mother tongue important? Why do we emphasize it for the children as they come into school for foundational learning, as children come into school? So educationally speaking, children, and developmentally speaking for children, how do they learn? First, they listen to language, and then they speak the language. Then they read, and then they write. So that is the way it should be, the order: listening, speaking, reading, writing. And if this can be in the same language, children actually, their faculties grow in an orderly way. Whereas if you mix up 2-3 languages, they're not very well. Perhaps if you do it very, very well, it can happen that 2-3 languages can be learned. But if we stick to one language, children have actually their abilities, their mind is able to understand the world in that language. And after 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that we can calibrate. But the second language is actually learned much better. So the reason that we dwell on mother tongue is that also it's very contextual, I have to say. English here is been an aspirational language. Many people want their children to learn English because it is the language of jobs. But the English that they're taught in the schools is very bad English. It's very poor because the teacher's English may not be good enough either. So it becomes a big mishmash, children are learning no language well, whereas if they were to begin with their own language, they at least learn that fully, and thereafter they can go into. So I'm aware that this is an area that we can discuss again and needs a lot more thinking and discussion, but that we should begin with the mother tongue is also come from a context of colonialism and post-colonialism, where we forget our own languages and cultures, and we go full scale into the other, and we are never fully accepted there either. So to empower ourselves, we need to know our own languages and cultures, not in a regressive way, but just in a way to live the lives. And so multilingual education, have I looked at that, or is something, the second question, I'm not sure if I've answered the second question, but yeah.
I think actually we would like to listen more, but because time is limited. But I think our audience can try to survey your information from the internet, because I think you have a lot of writing about the women right, and also I think a lot of great thinking about education. So that's really great. Thank you very much for your sharing today, and hopefully in the near future you can come to Taiwan and join us with your great idea about the education and the empower. Okay. 那在场
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
请问郑老师有没有要一些回应？好，那如果没有的话，因为时间的关系哈，所以我们是不是可以再给我们的那个主讲者？好，那我想谢谢各位。其实印度的哲学，坦白说，我觉得他们在就是很多精神哲学、灵性哲学上面，其实有非常多值得去参考的部分。但是它其实在社会场域里面，其实有非常多的种姓制度跟阶级的很多的问题。所以我觉得在最光明跟最黑暗的那个部分，刚好形成了一个非常大的张力。那我觉得在这个部分其实非常值得我们去看，因为目前在看108课纲里面有很多灵性哲学，除了 Stana 以外，其实印度有非常多的生命哲学是很值得去看的。所以今天其实我想就是Doctor 其实他非常清楚的去呈现那些脉络跟内在价值，那反而是后面的一些外在的社会他们抗争的那个社会脉络，其实在他的文章里面都有。好，所以我想其实可以提供大家做参考。那非常谢谢主办单位非常慧眼独具的，就是请到我们今天的讲者，因为我觉得其实从社会批判再回到我们所谓的另类教育，其实有非常多的很深层的议题跟启示。好，谢谢。Thank you for your sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish we had longer time to go into the issues more deeply, but this was very, very interesting. Thank you.